what happened after COVID with signature verification getting thrown out the door in 11% of signatures in Georgia were invalid. There was like a 0.1% win rate. Like that's what Biden
That had to
won
get
by.
recounted, right?
Well, yeah, it's too late now. I mean, we're at the next election. But that's the only way Trump loses at this point, is that or the deep state decides to assassinate them both. Like, that's the only option for Trump to not be the next president.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Stick Talk podcast. This is a throwback episode because Jennings here was, what were you saying? Our first
I think guest number 2, because Scott was first.
Scott doesn't count. So Jennings was our first official guest of the podcast. Now you're back. What, 2 years later?
2 years later.
2 years later.
And we're
dude,
still doing it.
We're still doing it. You're looking good, dude. You got another kid since then. You have another one on the way. So
I'll try to make it
lot
through
has
this
changed.
whole episode. I think that was still when I was like leaving halfway through to take the sales meeting.
oh, did he really leave halfway through? Yeah, then we got
Did he?
more tinfoil hat. Remember?
Oh, yeah, we did. I was wondering how tinfoil hat unhinged we were getting tonight. Considering this, my last episode turned into a newspaper article.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought I sent that to you guys. Where
did,
yeah,
you
the
did.
local newspaper took my took the podcast like a year later. They're like, on this podcast, he said he's a professional propagandist. I'm like, I said it on a podcast. Do you think this is gonna hurt my feelings?
So are you gonna be super careful tonight or what?
We'll see.
We're trying to make
See
it
how the night
into,
goes.
we're trying to make it into the national news this time.
National
Yeah.
news will be fun. I mean,
Yeah.
we were talking about my favorite John Daly quote beforehand. Caffeine plus nicotine equals protein.
Yeah.
And I think based on the debate, like John Daly, Scotty Scheffler, like we should start having some pro golfers as presidents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. For real. Well, Dan likes to say bros Empic
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
another term for caffeine and nicotine.
Yeah.
It's really the best form of weight loss. But I mean, Biden could probably beat Scheffler on an off day.
Yeah.
He's a 6 handicap. That's
Yeah.
pretty solid.
If he's a 6 handicap, I'm 6% body fat.
You're a 6 handicap.
Well, he corrected himself and he said he was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
So let's give him a break.
You guys have played golf with me. You know how terrible I am.
You're
I
a
have
6 handicap.
I have no room to talk, but yeah, that was
Dude, we got to
ridiculous.
play golf again, because out of the people that we've played with down here, I mean, no offense, because I'm just as bad, but it was great being like, yes, I got somebody who's just as bad.
Who did we play? We played together?
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought it was me, you, Dylan, and Adam. Or was that a different round?
Way back,
We
it
did
was us
multiple
four. We
rounds.
played at Bradenton Country Club.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was when we went down to Sarasota for July 4th, so that must
Yeah.
have
Oh, yeah. Dude, that course is
That was when we
Yeah.
first
Such
met
a
you,
course.
actually.
Yeah, it was. I think that was our first time meeting in person.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice country club. You still there?
Yeah.
Love that place.
That was
I
a
golfed with the
beautiful
terrorists, bro. That was
country
fun.
club.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
You
should
got
have
to
brought
what?
it.
I golfed with a terrorist.
A terrorist?
Yeah, Adam Johnson.
You golfed with a terrorist? Like one that looked
J6
like me or
insurrectionist.
someone else?
A white terrorist.
Those aren't real terrorists.
Would you call him a proud boy?
That's cultural
not a proud boy,
That's
no.
cultural appropriation.
Absolutely not. I will.
Wait. Can you clarify for the audience?
He's
You
a
said you
terrorist.
golfed
Okay.
with a terrorist.
Yes.
No, Adam is not a terrorist unless you're a Democrat. Then you think he's a terrorist. Adam was the guy who picked up the podium on January 6th.
I don't know. I would consider him a terrorist.
The lectern guy.
He's a terrorist.
He's definitely not a terrorist. I should have brought it. So you guys know Tyler Kleitz,
Yeah.
season 1
Lego
Lego
legend.
Masters. Yeah. He built a custom minifig of Adam Johnson with the podium and the hair and everything. It's perfect.
That's awesome. I saw he's doing hats now too.
Adam's
Adam?
doing hats. He's also doing shirts, and all the proceeds go to take care of the kids of people who are in prison for January 6th still.
Did they just get rid of all that?
They got rid of a lot of the...
Yeah, what was the
lot
Supreme
of the-
Court decision the other day?
They ruled it was something north of 100 that were basically unjust convictions. I mean, at the end of the day, Adam's conviction was unjust. He was led into the building by a cop. He went up to Capitol Police and was like, "Hey, can we be in here?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can be in here. Like, stay within the ropes." And he picked up the podium. Like,
Yeah.
any other
So
day.
what,
And
did they say it was like entrapment? Almost?
more or less.
'Cause, I mean, you
like-
can't go into a public office building and pick up a podium and start running around. So like, but
Well-
they're saying it was legal because
Yeah, basically, because so many people were let in by Capitol Police. I mean, they're having a hard time holding up that story, and they kind of want it to go away. I mean, if you saw, there was the video of Nancy Pelosi, throwback to
Wasn't her daughter
episode.
saying something?
Yeah, her daughter was
best
filming.
stock trader of all time, by the way. She's
Well-
up 71% in the last 6 months.
I
Nancy Pelosi.
seriously am considering creating a stock trading account that just follows.
Somebody
her
does
trades.
that.
That's what I was just
Yeah.
looking
Yeah,
at.
there's
on
multiple people
Twitter
who are
on the
doing
way
it now.
here.
They're up 76%,
Yeah, it's
71%,
unbelievable.
70. Like, it's crazy.
She's one of the best.
I cut you off though. Finish that thought.
They're trying to make that go away, which is why you're not going to hear as many January 6th comments, because Nancy Pelosi said on film, yeah, I should have called in the National Guard,
Yeah.
because Trump offered the National Guard, right? Like, that's kind of what the National Guard's for, is defending DC.
Well, the story that originally came out is that he sat there and let it happen, and he also encouraged it.
But he has no authority over the Capitol. Like, there's separation of powers for a reason.
And it's also not what happened, because he was making calls saying, hey, I think we should have the National Guard here even before that day.
correct.
And that's on record.
Yeah.
And that's why you hear now behind closed doors what Pelosi and all these Dems are saying.
Yeah, 100%.
I would invade the Capitol to see Pelosi's.
The heavies?
Yeah, the heavy.
The heavies.
Yep,
That's
throwback to our episode.
Is that when we talked about? Is that
Yeah,
when
it
Dan made
was.
the comment?
Yeah.
The heavies.
Yeah. Yeah, but seriously, best stock trader of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not big into stocks. I don't like investing into things I don't have control over, but I'm seriously considering just following her trades, because I mean, it has to work. If you look at what members of Congress are worth versus how much they make, like AOC is worth what, 12 million, something like that.
Yeah. And she was like a bartender.
She was a
before, right?
bartender before. She was broke. She was complaining after she got elected that she wasn't going to be able to afford to live in DC, and everybody was railing her on her for it. Now she has this crazy net worth because members of Congress are allowed to trade.
And they know some things, right? But let's go back to kind of the political landscape, right? Because that's the line of work. So
Yeah.
it's not just like, let's just talk politics. It's also the work that you do. Going all the way back to like 2 years ago, it was more a conversation of like, hey, is Trump the guy? And there are a lot of guys that thought DeSantis was a much better fit. And so where are your thoughts now with Trump being the candidate on the Republican side? And then we can get even more into like the debate and all the things happening recently. But how do you feel? How are you feeling about who the Republicans are putting up?
I think Donald Trump is going to be the next president unless there is massive campaign fraud and interference like we saw in 2020. Like, that's really what it comes down to for me. The more we see what happened after COVID with signature verification getting thrown out the door in Georgia, and we now know that 11% of signatures in Georgia were invalid.
Wow.
There was like a 0.1% win rate. Like that's what Biden
That had
won
to get
by.
recounted, right?
Well, yeah, it's too late now. I mean, we're at the next election. But that's the only way Trump loses at this point, is that, or the deep state decides to assassinate them both. Like, that's the only
Yeah.
option for Trump to not be the next president.
Well, what are your thoughts on them pulling the plug on Biden and putting in someone that seems more favorable, like a Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama?
I think it's likely to happen. I think that's the only explanation for why we had the debate so early this
Early,
year.
yeah.
Because
Usually it's in September, correct?
well, historically, you don't do debates before the convention because neither of them are officially the nominee yet.
Yeah.
They're the presumptive nominees.
And the convention is what, in July?
Yeah, both conventions are in July. I forget the dates, but Republican convention is like right around the 18th, and then Dem convention's right
Mhm.
before.
Okay.
So
These guys told me to die.
It doesn't work? Oh, damn.
It's okay. We got Zen.
Padrone, 1926. It always draws. It's always
Always.
perfect.
Happens to the best of us, man.
Also, Southern Draws. That's
Is that a
big.
cigar brand?
Yeah, that's become my
Southern
new
Draw.
go-to stick. Like Christian small business, all the rappers say Soli Deo Gloria on him. That's like my go-to stick at home, but I love Padrones.
I love that.
so I
Yeah,
can turn it
Padrones are
down.
awesome, dude. So you think it's likely that Biden gets replaced, and that was part of the strategy all along, and then still you don't think whoever they put up against Trump is going to win, or at least has a better chance than Biden has now?
I think anyone has a better chance than Biden after that debate. Like, that was terrible. And I think the saddest part was
I drank every time Biden looked confused, and I was hammered. I'm so drunk in Andre's apartment.
He was Biden at the end of it.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know if they put Newsom in there or Michelle Obama. I don't like Trump's chances.
If they put Newsom in there, it's an easy attack, right? Do you want the entire country to turn into California? And then you show just all the California homeless camps. Like, that's the attack. Michelle Obama has a better chance than Gavin Newsom of beating Trump. Is
We're
what
gonna
I'll
have a
say.
tranny in office.
Okay, now you're going super conspiracy. The one who has multiple kids.
All I'm saying is there's
Were
not
you there
a
for the birth? God
there's
damn.
not a single picture of her pregnant. $1,000
Bro,
on
she's
the
built
table.
like a line. She's looked like Ray Lewis.
A
A woman
thousand-
does not have that broad of a back, bro. She has a broader back than you.
I could say
She could
some
probably bench
things
more than
to get
me.
me in trouble. But
Lots of people can
That's
bench more than
crazy.
Dan.
That's crazy though that there's no pictures anywhere out there of her being pregnant.
And if you
Obama's
put it
gay.
into Chat GPT, it refuses to create an image of Michelle Obama pregnant.
Wow. And isn't ChatGPT there? I've seen tweets and some people talking about how it does lean pretty hard left, just like anything else.
Most things lean
how
pretty
famous
hard
were they
left.
when she was pregnant with kids, though?
Yeah, but she would still have a picture of it.
Did she post them online?
I mean, I
Instagram
would if there was
wasn't
an entire conspiracy theory online of like, I'd pay you $1,000 if you can find
No
a picture.
press is bad press.
It was like the early 2000s, bro.
Yeah, but everybody still had pictures then. You still
Did you
had
see the whole
pregnant-
expose of how some guy came out against Obama for like sexually assaulting him?
Which one?
What was the whole thing about? Wasn't it the chef at the White House?
Well, yeah, he died in a like
Swimming, right?
paddleboarding thing
In a pond, yeah.
It wasn't the White House. It was at Obama's Cape Cod home, I think. But look,
So he gave Obama head and then got killed for it. That kind of sucks.
That's not true.
no comment.
Yeah, let's not go
So far off,
far into the
dude.
deep end. Just
Yeah, we're going. Real
I thought
far
we were
into the
going
end.
deep end, bro. Let's go.
I'm doing this quarter sober, and we're still going into the deep end.
So here's like my issue with Trump as a candidate, because I was a big DeSantis guy, like you alluded to, and then I was a big Vivek guy when it was clear that DeSantis had no chance. And now it's like, shit, we're stuck with this guy again. Because I watched the debates, I'm like, dude, why are these our two options? Like, I don't know if I'd want to hire either for a job at ListKit or Client Ascension, but one of them is going to have the most important job in the entire world.
Okay,
You wouldn't
can
hire
we-
Trump as a
can we-
closer, bro? Are you kidding me?
Can we pause
No.
right
He
there?
would close every
It's the
deal.
best program. We guarantee 5 clients or you don't pay.
So, president is not the most important job in the entire world, at least as far as our individual lives go. The two most important elected officials, actually, do you guys know who your sheriff is?
No.
You should text me about it.
Oh, I will. You'll be on the next text, guaranteed, for your sheriff,
Please,
Chad Chronister.
okay.
Is your sheriff, wonderful sheriff. The two most important elected officials in the life of any American are your sheriff and your state attorney. They have more say over the quality of your life than the president does, but most people don't know who their sheriff is. Like, most people don't know who their state attorney is if they know who their sheriff is, because like Chad Chronister, again, phenomenal sheriff. He was the guy who, after Tiger King came out, reopened the case against Carol Baskin.
Oh my goodness.
Not against Carol Baskin, but into Carol Baskin's husband's murder that she definitely did.
Interesting.
So, yes, I guess the way I'm looking at it is the president has much more say over national security, which at this point I think is like a bigger topic than it was in 2020
Yeah.
or 2016, really, since I can like really remember, because I wasn't old enough to really remember 2012, 2008, and also just the financial markets. I think if Biden wins, the market's going to go
But
one
if-
way, and if Trump wins, the market goes the other
Yeah,
way.
but if I guess the question on that is like, what's the problem with Trump in either of those scenarios?
So I think
He's got the best track record with foreign policy and us being out of wars. He's the only president that ever was in office that did not have any war started when he was president. And then number two, with the economy,
fantastic.
he had the
on
biggest
both
tax
fronts.
cuts for business, right?
Yeah, no. I think he did an excellent job, and I think if he got in, he would do a really good job. I just think him versus DeSantis, who would have had similar policies, and Vivek, who probably would have had similar policies, he's just way less electable in a general election. Like, I think he has the
Well,
greatest chance to lose against the other person.
If he's so
Vivek wouldn't.
non-electable, how did he body both of those guys?
Because he, in the Republican base, he obviously has the craziest fan base, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you're looking at all Republicans who vote in the primaries, Trump wins. But if it was a general election, all Trump voters go to them, and I think more people in the middle would also go to those.
Did you
two
see the map I
candidates.
sent before this podcast? Like every state was red. New Hampshire was red.
Dude, it's like also the thing that bugs me with a lot of people who are like Trump is Jesus is like when the polls are against him, polls are all fake fraud. When the polls are for him, it's like look at the polls, and it's just like this endless loop. I don't know, man. I just think that
I just
he
think
has
the
greatest
polls have
chance to
never,
lose.
like, both times now for the third time he's run, the polls have never been for him ever. This is like the
Yeah.
first time ever. And Jennings maybe could
Yeah,
back that
it's-
up or refute it.
It's the first time polls have been for him. Look, one, Trump is not Jesus. Jesus is Jesus, and
Yes.
Jesus is
Is king.
Lord, and Christ is King.
Yep, I agree.
Somebody come after me for that one.
Probably.
Yeah, definitely. What I will say is polling numbers are tricky
Yes.
because they assume some things on voter turnout, and voter turnout gets skewed with different elections, right? So a lot of the polling for Trump's first election in 2016 was based on Obama turnout numbers. And turnout numbers for Obama were very different. You also have to take into account voter fraud and the fact that there are huge pushes to have illegal immigrants register to vote. You have to take into account.
By the way, is that illegal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
You can't,
illegal immigrants
you can't
voting?
vote if you're not. You can't vote for president if you're not a U.S. citizen.
So how do they?
There's no voter ID in most states. Florida has really good voter ID laws. I mean, I'd like to see them even tighter, but that's just me. There's a lot of states where you don't have to show an ID to vote. You just say, "Hey, I'm Bob Smith. Like, give me my ballot."
But you have to show ID to get on an airplane or fucking do
Just
anything.
show ID to buy a drink. Actually, so weird fact. Apparently, you don't have to show ID to get on an airplane. I was going on my driver's license was stuck to my credit card and I couldn't find it going through my wallet at the airport a few weeks ago. And she's like, "Oh, there's a workaround. You just have to go through extra security." And then I found it and it was unstuck. And I'm like, okay, like we're good. But yeah, there's some weird workaround there. I don't know what it is, but in general, you have to have an ID for everything else. The only reason to oppose voter ID laws is if you want to commit voter fraud.
Yeah, what's the other side of the argument? I never understood that.
There isn't one.
There isn't one that
Still does.
I'm going
They
to
still
have
do
say-
paper fucking ballots, dude.
What?
It's still paper ballots.
It should be paper ballots.
No, it should be like blockchain on your phone, bro.
So, I mean, yeah, if we lived in Bukele land, which, I mean, real MVP. For
I wish
best
we
world
did. There's
leader,
no crime there.
I wish we lived there too. Trust me, every once in a while I see something that he does on Twitter. I'm like, sorry, babe, we're moving. Like, we are going to El Salvador. I guess I have to learn
Is it
Spanish.
like
finally.
murderers, criminals?
We gotta
But, like, we
release.
shouldn't
He didn't murder them. He just
We
We
gotta
lost
shouldn't
free
be
them.
SBF
penciling
to
in
get
our
the
vote
job
on a
done.
piece of paper.
Well, so I prefer paper ballots because then there's a record of who voted for who.
Yeah, that they can also throw away or put in a garbage bin.
Yeah, which I mean, we won't get into mail-in ballot security.
a lot
but
of flaws in the system. I guess going back to my original stance, which obviously just an opinion, you know way more about politics than me. What would you say to somebody who's like, I just feel like he is not a very electable candidate compared to some of the other guys like DeSantis and Vivek that we could have put up against Biden? Because like with Vivek, like how clearly he speaks. Imagine if he's against Biden, who's mumbling and bumbling on stage. It's like you just watching, you're like, oh yeah, of course we're gonna go with that guy.
look, I like DeSantis and I like Vivek. I, as a Floridian, would have loved for Ron DeSantis to be president. That being said, I was not I was not thinking that there was a chance there with Trump still in the election. I thought he was a really good backup candidate.
Yeah.
Because of how, what's the right word? Passionate
The Trump
base is.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, Trump's base is the most passionate group of people I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys have gone to a Trump rally, but it's insane. It's like, I went to Trump's 2020 announcement that he was running for re-election in Orlando. Got VIP seats. It was great. Wow. Was in the box, but watching everybody on the floor, it was a party down there. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm all in for Trump 2024, and I am all in for DeSantis 2028.
Who takes
That'd be
over as
great.
governor? New election?
Well, there will be a new election in 2026. If he doesn't become the vice president, my hope is that Byron Donalds will be the governor in 2026.
Is he Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's up for VP too. His
Yeah,
name's in the mix.
Yeah, he was on the short list for speaker. He's on the list for VP. If I was Donald J. Trump, I would pick Byron to run as the VP in a heartbeat. Like,
why?
One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Good dad, devoted husband, knows his policy. He served the state of Florida well. He served well in Congress. Like, there is not a better pick for Donald Trump's VP than Byron Donalds.
Who's that?
I like Vivek.
I don't like Vivek because I think you lose the Christian vote.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's too much of an overlap.
You
Yeah.
lose the Christian vote, you're saying?
Yeah.
Vivek is too well spoken. Gives me Obama vibes.
So I think the
No, I
issue,
don't think
the
that's
issue
it,
with
'cause he's an
Vivek
outsider.
is, like, at the end of the day, this is still a predominantly Christian nation. The majority of people identify as Christians. The Christian base is still voting Christian. And I think pushing somebody in there, I mean, even though I think that's part of what hurt Romney, was that the hardcore Christian base was not thrilled about having a Mormon in the White
What
House.
religion is Vivek?
Vivek's Hindu.
Buddhist or Hindu?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
Hindu.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which
so
I know there's like a whole bunch of subsects, and somebody is going to be mad that I called him Hindu, but
the
Yeah.
the Vegas odds have Doug Burgum as a favorite.
Doug Burgum just because he looks like George Washington.
Doug Burgum as a favorite, followed by J.D. Vance, then Tim Scott, then Vivek, then Ben Carson.
Interesting. I think the argument against Burgum, did you hear what he came out and said today?
no,
About
I missed
how-
that.
He basically said we need to support Ukraine as much as possible because we're at war with Russia. And it's like, I don't know. I think that's contradicting to Trump's view on what's happening.
I think that's contradicting the average Republican's view on that, especially with them adding women to the draft. Like,
Who did?
Congress.
Congress added women to
they're
the
adding
draft
women to
for
the
the United
draft.
States of America
Yes.
Army?
Yeah,
Oh,
for the
interesting.
military. I don't think most Americans want to send their sons to die in Ukraine,
Definitely not. the
much
Congress.
less send their daughters to die in Ukraine. And at the end of the day, like, the thing that a lot of people, particularly the military vote who actually serves in wars, not like the generals, didn't want a president who was going to go start another war. Like, that's antithetical to everything that we have historically stood for in this country up until like post World War II consensus. Is like, we didn't used to get involved in wars that weren't our fight. Like, that was kind of our thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to get back to that because we've been at war for basically my entire life. I mean, we had Gulf War, which wrapped up Gulf War. We had, the operation, blanking on it, but the Black Hawk Down operation happened the day I was born. And then we've been in Iraq, Afghanistan since 2001. I think Americans are tired of war. And also, like, no offense to you guys, since you're one generation below me by like a year, like, we are severely underprepared for war with Generation Z. Like,
Huh.
And the military knows that the military is admitting it. They're trying to raise the age of the draft as well to help cover for this. But we don't deploy people who are on Adderall. And there's a huge percentage of Gen Z who's on Adderall.
Why?
Or on
The
an
Nazis used to give their
SSRI.
troops like meth. We need Adderall.
That's why they lost.
We got to lock in. What's wrong with Adderall?
Because you can't guarantee that you're going to have access to medicine on forward operating basis.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like Gen Z is screwed because they'd be like, I want my parents.
That is it. By the way, book recommendation. If you guys haven't read Bad Therapy by Abigail Schreier, I was finishing it on the ride up here. Phenomenal book, particularly for our generation. Makes like the
Bad therapy.
Bad therapy.
It's just talking about how like therapy's bad.
No, it's talking about how we took an entire generation and everybody in Gen Z particularly has like a mental health diagnosis of some type.
Yes.
They're all
Like-
on
we
SSRIs.
talked about this.
It's like 50% of Gen Z has a diagnosis and like 50% of that is on an SSRI.
What's an
like-
SSRI?
I don't know what it stands for,
Some
but it's
form
like
of
an
something.
it's like an
Is it like a drug? Like that they give them?
serotonin
Yeah.
reuptake inhibitor. It's
Like, what's an example
It's
of
like an
one?
Like
anti
Xanax, right?
yeah, Xanax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hashtag not a doctor, but
yeah.
yeah.
But
I
it's
mean,
the
same thing
basics.
with like huge number of kids on Adderall. Like Adderall's
We
just
probably
meth.
have like 10 family members on them.
Yeah.
Lexapro, Prozac,
Yeah.
Zoloft. Those are more popular ones. Xanax is pretty powerful.
I was gonna say Xanax is like
That's
crazy.
yeah,
right?
no. Zoloft and Prozac I feel like are the most.
What do? They just help with anxiety essentially.
Yeah, but you have a huge percentage of the population on those. It's part of why the military is having a recruiting crisis. Like,
Why?
You
Because
can't-
you can't be in the military if you're on one of those.
yeah, you can't be in the military if you're on one of those, and like they're going to lower the bar for recruiting.
That would probably be the easiest way to draft dodge then, right?
Shit.
I mean, basically right now, but they'll change the policy if they need to.
Yeah.
Like when it's hard to when the military doesn't need people, they raise the standard, and when the military does need people, they lower the standard.
Of course.
So,
just
like-
anything else.
Dude,
It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like my dumb brain sees, hey, we don't want to be in a war that we're not directly involved in as such like a easy opinion to get behind. But wasn't the war already started in 2022? Around the time when the midterm elections were?
Yeah, but that was when everyone was still kind of believing the media on it. And they were like, yeah, no, Ukraine, like it's the tides shifted really fast on that because we saw that, you know, we're giving billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. By the way, did you guys see Zelensky's wife just got caught buying a $4.4 million Bugatti?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, Christian,
What color is your Bugatti,
Christian
bro?
told me
Yeah.
that.
I
So what,
drive
bro?
a
I
Nith-
support
a
buying your
Nissan.
dream car.
I don't with taxpayer dollars. Like,
I know.
I don't know what you guys
As a business person, like, respect.
I support a boss girl.
If you can finesse that much money out of America, respect.
That was
I
my favorite
completely
line
disagree.
from Trump in the entire debate was like Zelensky every time he makes a trip here walks away with billions of dollars.
best salesman
Best
ever.
salesman ever. It's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, see him, I would hire as a closer. Zelensky would be great.
Yeah.
But why wasn't there the red wave 2 years ago that a lot of people were expecting?
Variety of reasons. One was turnout related to Roe v. Wade and the concerns around there.
Yep.
There was a much higher turnout. Two, I do think that there was election interference still in 2022. Three, people kind of suck at showing up to midterm elections. They also suck at showing up to primaries. Like, do you guys know that we have primaries next month?
Nope.
Yeah. August 20th. You still have time to register to vote. Like, go vote in your primaries.
I bet you half our audience doesn't even know what a primary is.
Yeah.
I also think another reason is Trump backed some pretty mediocre candidates. Herschel Walker, Dr. Phil. Yeah,
Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz.
Dr.
Oz, who
Okay,
might have-
Dr.
Dr. Phil would have won. My
Okay,
bad.
hold
I
on,
like
hold
Dr.
on.
Phil.
He's a
Dr.
smart guy.
Oz is the reason Trump won in 2016.
You think?
When Trump went on the Dr. Oz show, I was still working at a lobby firm at that point in time. We were watching it. And I turned to my colleague and I said, Trump just won the election.
How? What happened?
He was on Dr. Oz, which is watched primarily by white middle class women
Yep.
who are a significant voter base. And on the Dr. Oz show, when Dr. Oz was asking him about his health, Trump said, I could probably lose 10 to 15 pounds. You just connected with every middle-aged, middle-class woman in America when you say that. Like, I am dead set on that was the turning point in the election. That's what saved him after the
Weight loss,
grab her
people.
by the pussy comments. Like,
Yeah. Christian, if he was wearing a hot girls do Pilates hat during that interview, you'd
Oh,
be
bro.
a millionaire.
Don, if you need some hats, bro, I got you.
He's hard, dude. He pushes more hats. than
Make
anybody in the
Pilates
world.
great again. That shit would pop.
Yeah, I just wasn't a fan of a lot of the candidates that he threw up there, and I don't know, because what I've heard from a lot of Republicans, like there was voter fraud in 2020, there was voter fraud in 2022.
I think election interference would probably keep us safer on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, sure. We'll release this highlights if we need
the-
to.
Whatever side wins, the loser claims voter fraud every
That's
time.
what I'm saying.
that's
but, like,
actually not historically true.
2016 interference, 2020 interference.
I'm guessing what's changed since the last two elections to say it won't happen again, because
Arizona has better voter laws now. Georgia has better voter laws now. And unlike 2020, where there were a lot of forced mail-in ballots because
Due
of
to COVID.
we're not looking at that situation this time where mail-in ballots happen. I mean, I'm not going to be very careful how I phrase this. If you are a Republican, you should not be unless you are like truly homebound. You should not be voting by mail, because it's very easy for mail carriers who are largely Democrats to figure out what houses are Republican and what houses are Democrat.
It's public data.
It's public data. I mean, we've seen this in Broward County, where mail-in ballots from Republican neighborhoods made it into the trash, and that was 2016. She's back delivering mail now, like the person who got caught red-handed, because the postal workers union is so strong. So,
but at what point do we say, because this was something that I was told growing up, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Maybe they're just better at cheating and they're just going to win again.
I would say that they're
fair. That's fair.
I don't think that's fair. I think they're, the Dems constantly rally around my democracy, my democracy, my democracy. One, America's a republic. Historically, up until 1900s, we didn't even have a direct election of senators, right? Like,
Yeah.
we really drew back on that because we realized that there needed to be checks and balances, particularly on uneducated voters. Like, that was the entire concern going back to.
And you're
our
still
founders.
defending paper ballots?
Yeah, paper ballots. There's actually there's proof in a hand count.
Okay, if it was on the blockchain, which it could very well be because this country has the resources to do that, you would vote, you get a digital signature, and it's on the blockchain, and that's it. You can't fucking erase it.
Yeah, but then you're going to have a huge number of people who are basically at gunpoint saying like, hey, go ahead and vote right now. That's why we historically have had people go in to vote in person.
Yeah.
Is because it's supposed to cut down on voter intimidation. Now, that's not saying it does, because we've all seen.
Okay, I'm sure they could figure out a way to set up like a POS system where it's like, I don't know. I just think a paper ballot in 2024 is blasphemy.
I don't trust the people coding it.
But you trust a system where a mailer, a UPS worker could throw away a bucket?
No, I don't.
ballots is
No,
the
I don't.
issue.
I don't.
The paper ballots at a traditional polling
my-
center.
When I went in to vote in 2020 in Binghamton, it was a Democratic whatever, and I put Trump on the ballot, and it said Christian Bonnier Republican, and the ladies gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. How do you know they didn't just fucking tear it up when I voted?
Well, in Florida, you actually put your own ballot.
Yeah, you
into
put
the
it in the
machine.
machine. You did that in New York. You have to.
Where does it go when it's in the machine?
The machine automatically tallies.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but the intimidation, like you mentioned, is part of the problem. Right?
Yeah, it's part of the problem. I mean,
That's a two-sided problem too.
Definitely.
There's so many points of failure in the system that it's insane to think about.
yeah.
There's how many voting places in America? Hundreds or thousands? If 50 of them in swing states are corrupted, it's over.
Dude, that's what gets me so nervous about Trump, because there legitimately is, I don't know if it's 48%, 50%, 52%, there's a certain percentage of population that hates him so much that
But
they
that's
will-
changed so much over the past 4 years.
I still
It's
think
changed
it's-
so much over the past 4 weeks.
Yeah, but I still think there's 50% probably that absolutely will just vote for
50%
anybody
of the
but.
voting population?
I don't think so.
No way.
I think that number's
that's
way
that's
high.
where I'm optimistic. Is back in 2016 when he went up against Clinton and lost, he was down in the polls like pretty dramatically, and then in 2020 when he went up against Biden, down in the polls pretty dramatically. He won in 2016, he lost in 2020. Going into this election, it's the first time he's been up pretty dramatically.
Fact check me on this. Didn't he lose the popular vote against
both times.
Both times.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like
yeah.
there are
Yeah,
so
Republicans always lose the popular
Yeah.
vote. Like that's
we're just putting up a candidate who's going to have such a small margin of victory. It's like you only got to bury 10,000 ballots, and they're better at cheating. So I just think it's going to happen again.
Bro, he could swing like New Hampshire. That doesn't happen.
What'd you say?
New Hampshire pulled red. That's never happened ever in like the history of the
Nevada.
country.
I mean, there's a lot of examples of this.
Yeah,
That's what
there-
I'm saying. Like this is the
he had a rally in the
This is-
Bronx that was like so massive. It's like
yeah, he's a massively popular president. If you look at his rallies versus Biden's rallies, or I mean, look at his social media numbers versus Biden's social
Yeah.
media numbers. Like he
he made
clear-
one TikTok, he got like 100 million views.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think the perception of Trump is a lot different. In 2020, it was like this guy is divisive. We're still in the COVID atmosphere. There was a lot going against him, right? And then nowadays, you see like all especially the influencers are like the telltale sign.
Yeah.
Right. Like you see Logan Paul being buddy with Trump on a podcast. Like that
Yeah.
was unimaginable back in 2020. And then you see guys like Elon. You see all the guys out in San Francisco, like the All In
The All In
podcast.
podcast, yeah.
Like he's got backing from so many people that you would have never imagined having or wanting anything to do with the guy. And so I think
Patrick
the tide
Bet
has
David.
Patrick
Like-
Bet David. I mean, there's been so much I would say like efforts from like these homegrown podcasts
Yeah.
and influencers in the media that I think really will make a difference this time around.
Well, and the viewership on legacy media is way down. It drops every single election. Like more people listen to Joe Rogan than watch any.
I think
of the
Trump will be
network
on
news.
Rogan before the election.
All I want,
Didn't
all I
Rogan
want
say
this
he wouldn't do
election
it?
cycle.
Huh?
Didn't Rogan say he would never do it?
No, Rogan offered last cycle
To get both of them on.
to get both of them on and do a debate, which I think Rogan moderating a debate would be incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it'd be
He
the
would
best
just
debate
lose
ever.
and start asking way too many alien questions.
I want Rogan to be like, hey, so which one of you guys have ever tried DMT?
Yeah.
That
But all you want this election cycle.
is for in terms of national politics, because like
Yeah.
local, state level stuff, there's lots of stuff I want. I would love one of two things: either one, a presidential golf competition, because I think that'd be incredible, or two, like even just a driving contest, because I don't think Biden can make it through 18 holes. But like,
No.
like,
No.
like that would be entertaining. Because again, I view national politics, particularly like the presidential race, largely entertainment.
It's
right?
theater.
It's largely theater. It matters, right? But it still doesn't matter as much as it. Let's talk about Cathedral right now, right? Like Cathedral didn't get fucked over by the president of the United States. They got fucked over by the Tampa City Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I love Cathedral. I know you guys love Cathedral. Like, local politics matters.
Yeah.
Like, who your city commissioner is impacts your life way more than who the president is. Who your sheriff is, like, and again, you guys cannot say enough. Like, great sheriffs. We have great sheriffs here in Florida throughout the state. But who your sheriff is matters way more. Who your state attorney is matters way more. Like, in terms of the businesses that I work with, most of the time, the decisions that make billions of dollars are made by the state legislature, and most people don't know who their state representative is or their state senator. I mean, I guarantee you that there's a decent population of this state who can't tell you that Governor DeSantis is the governor, because like you have people who only focus on national elections, or maybe they focus on their state level elections, right? They're U.S. senators, maybe they focus on the governor, but the people who have the most impact in your life on a day-to-day basis, city commissioners, county commissioners, sheriffs, state attorneys.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the one thing you wanted to see this election cycle?
Oh, Joe Rogan moderating a debate like would be incredible.
Yeah,
it'd be
I don't
awesome.
think Biden's gonna debate again though. At this point,
I wouldn't. If I were a Biden campaign advisor, I'd be like, no, you're not doing any more debates.
I think they're trying to get him out of there, and I think he wants to stay in so his son doesn't get arrested.
He
His
doesn't-
son's already convicted, and it doesn't matter. He could pardon his son at any point in time.
even after he's out of office.
He could. So
If they try him again after he's out of office, could they try him again?
you can preemptively pardon. Like they're like you can't say like, hey, this person can commit any crime they want in the future, but you can pardon people. Like that's what they did with Nixon. Nixon wasn't charged when he was pardoned.
Interesting. Okay.
By the way, Nixon was the greatest Republican president of the 1900s, and anybody who says otherwise can fight me on this.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard that
I
actually.
don't know
I-
anything about that.
Why? Because I actually don't have any like knowledge about Nixon at all, except for he
So-
cheated and got kicked out.
Nixon, but for Watergate, which was definitely a setup to get him out of office, hardcore pro-business conservative. Like, if you look at him on a policy scorecard, Nixon was more conservative than Ronald Reagan is.
Wow.
Every conservative wants to be like, oh, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan is the reason we had an assault weapons ban. Ronald Reagan's also the reason California's blue, because he went and did a naturalization program when he was governor of California and really pushed for all of the illegal immigrants in California to become citizens. Like, you want to know why Republicans don't win in California? It's because of Ronald Reagan. And nobody wants to say that. But Nixon was a more conservative president than Ronald Reagan was.
And didn't he start the crack epidemic?
No comment. I mean,
for sure, for sure. I've read this like a one conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They would literally push crack into the streets and then use the funds
to fund
from
the
selling
CIA.
crack to fund different wars.
Which, by the way, is the craziest thing about American history and American politics is that, like, every few years the CIA comes out and is like, yeah, we did that. What are you going to do about it? And then everybody ignores it.
You
Like,
ever seen the show Snowfall?
no.
Really good show. It's like an FX show about that whole thing. And then you got Nancy Reagan, or there were some conspiracies about her. We're not going to talk about those, though. That'd get us in hot water with some of the three female viewers out there. Now, I guess with Nixon, you said it was a setup, Watergate was. I've never heard that before. So why do you believe that?
So I believe that Watergate was a setup because it was completely unprecedented for that level of journalism and investigation to happen in a presidential race, right? Like there's a great book, All the Truth Is Out. I'm blanking on the name of the author. The way we do politics has changed drastically since the 60s. If you look at Watergate, the fact that those guys couldn't keep their story together, by the way, I think is the best proof that Christ is Lord. Because if the 12 disciples would go to their death as like paupers to say that like, no, Christ died and rose again, but
After the fact.
and went to their deaths for it, but we couldn't have some of the most powerful men on earth keep their story together for a month. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with Roger Stone? Have you seen?
Of course.
Okay, so Roger Stone has a giant Nixon tattoo on his back for a reason. Greatest Republican
Lost a
president.
fantasy football league.
What was that?
I said the reason is he lost a fantasy football league. That seems like a punishment that you would have to do.
No, he like voluntarily did it.
Yeah, no, I was just messing. But that goes back to my point earlier. Who cheated and set him up and got him out of there? The Democrats. They're just better at the game.
So
This
why are Republicans always like at odds? Like I feel like there's always an attack on a Republican versus like Democrats are always propped up.
The media likes Democrats better than they like Republicans.
But like
The
Nixon,
establishment does.
Nixon set up,
Greater than
Trump
just the
set up.
media.
Like why?
Because one represents control, the other represents freedom. And
Well,
if you're in power, you want to have control.
It
what
all
about,
comes
like,
back to
George
money.
Bush, though? He was
It-
establishment as it
it
gets.
all
Yeah.
comes back to money. And if you look at the Republican platform, the official Republican platform, not what actually ends up happening under many presidents, under many Republican Congresses. The Republican platform is cut taxes, less spending, balanced budget. There's less money to go around on a Republican administration than there is for a Democrat administration. The Supreme Court Chevron ruling, the reason Democrats are mad about it is because they were propping up when Democrats enter office, they hire and appoint more people who stay around a longer period of time than Republicans do. So every conspiracy theory has to be traced back to the money. Who is making money off this? And if you can't tell me that, I don't believe in the conspiracy theory. It's why I have an issue with flat earthers, right? Like many reasons to have issues with flat earthers, but I've never heard a flat earther be like, hey, this is the financial motive behind like saying that the earth is a globe. If you could show me a financial motive, like I can say like, hey, that conspiracy theory might be legitimate. Like there was a financial motive on COVID. There was a financial motive on Watergate. There was a financial motive on like name a conspiracy. There's
Kennedy assassination.
Financial motive. I mean, he was trying to shut down the Federal Reserve. That's why Kennedy was assassinated.
Damn.
Period.
Really?
Yeah. By the way,
He's trying to get out of the war too. So you have the Pentagon kind of against you.
well, got to remember the Pentagon and the Federal Reserve were pretty closely tied because the Pentagon makes money based on the Federal Reserve printing money.
Yeah.
But Kennedy, like the reason Kennedy was assassinated was because he wanted to end the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's the same reason that we have.
Was Kennedy a good president?
I think Kennedy was Kennedy was the best Democrat president there's ever been. Like
Bill Clinton, good president. Not a good person.
he was a better president than any Democrat that they've run since. Like
Isn't that crazy? We had a surplus of money.
a budget surplus is insane.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we had
a
you know how we have a
budget
national
surplus.
debt? We had a surplus under
No, we didn't have we were still in debt, but we had a budget surplus. Like a budget surplus is unheard of in the past since Clinton. I would love to see another budget surplus. I think that's if there's a budget surplus, hey, then we have a like really strong reason to cut taxes beyond the fact that taxation is theft, and I just got my number from my accountant and I'm not very happy.
Yeah, I liked Trump's
What happened
argument, too,
to
on that.
patriotism? Back in the revolution, we rioted over 3% tax.
I know.
Three.
We
Now
once
it's 50%.
Inflation, it goes up.
that
Now
that's a
Californians like,
percentage.
take half my money, please.
Yeah, I
3% tax, you'll die for that.
I have
I would
friends,
kill for a 3% tax.
Oh, well, we had an entire rebellion over the fact that they tried to tax whiskey, right? Alexander Hamilton, who, by the way, is like the villain of American history. Like, Burr should have shot him sooner. Everyone's like, oh, the Hamilton the musical. Terrible guy. Like, one of the worst founding fathers was Alexander Hamilton.
Really?
Tried to introduce the initial Federal Reserve, the National Bank, which Jefferson fortunately stopped. And on top of that, he was the reason that we had the whiskey rebellion, because he tried to tax whiskey. If you tax whiskey, like you're a bad person, period. Like,
All right, I'll give you a conspiracy. The founding fathers never existed.
okay, are we getting into like Tartaria and everything before like?
I feel like at a
18
certain point, like it's all he said, she said, bro. Like there was no cameras.
Yeah,
You don't
that's
know.
way too tinfoil hat.
I don't
for me.
think it is.
That's way too tinfoil hat. For
Think
me.
about. Okay, hear me out. In 40 years, the textbooks, what they'll say about COVID will not be accurate at all to what actually happened.
Oh, actually, have you guys seen this study on 9/11?
No.
So they took people who were in like at the scene of 9/11, first responders.
Let's get Dom up here.
I'm
This
sorry. I'm just thinking about a dad joke that has nothing to do with this.
Oh, by the way,
conversation. When you said whiskey.
Dom told me to tell you guys that LeBron sucks. That was direct quote from him.
Biggest
How much
LeBron
did he
hater.
pay you to say that?
He said, tell them on the podcast LeBron sucks. They'll know what I mean. And I'm like, all right, fine.
You want to talk about?
Wait, no, keep going. What are you
Talk
saying?
about a conspiracy
they
theorist.
did a
Liar.
study on this. So 9/11, you have all these survivors. And every year they interview this group. It's a longitudinal study. They say, tell us about what happened. And they tell what happened at 9/11, what their experience was. Every year their story is different. And they say like, oh, I must have remembered that wrong the year before. The human memory is a fickle thing. And that's not like getting into a 9/11 conspiracy. It's one of the best studies ever done on memory over a period of
history
time.
in general.
Yeah, on a traumatic event that everybody, like, I remember where I was on 9/11.
Yeah.
You guys lived in
It's
New
why
York.
some crazy people think Jordan's better than LeBron. It's just time goes on and the memory gets distorted.
Yeah.
And then you realize he had no
Okay,
left
so
hand and was
that's what
playing
I'm
against
saying.
mailmen.
No, if only 20 years has passed and people can't even get a story straight, 1784, come on.
We do have firsthand primary source documents on that stuff. Like,
Dude, they've got like a museum with George Washington's teeth in it.
You just put some dentures together.
Okay, what about Jesus then? We're
I
going
was,
back.
so
thousands
wait,
of
not
so
going
we
this
got
far,
we got
bro.
like 10 minutes left on the podcast.
are you
before
serious?
We got to head out.
We haven't
to
even
dinner.
had like real
No, this
conversation
has
yet.
been
has
good.
just
This has been good. But Christian's argument brings up a really good argument. I want to pivot very hard right now to religion
okay.
because this is a topic I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And we go back and forth talking about Christianity versus Islam and some of the other religions out there. So Christian's argument is, how can you know for certain that the founding fathers even existed?
Mhm.
You referenced earlier the disciples and the apostles that were around when Christ was here on earth. So how do you know they existed and that Christ existed? And obviously I'm a Christian. I'm just playing the devil's advocate against the arguments that, say, a Muslim might bring to you. I want to have that debate.
Well, so let's be clear. Muslims do acknowledge that Jesus existed.
Yep.
There's not a single serious refutation of the existence of Christ. He's one of the most well-documented figures of antiquity of all time. Like, full stop. There's no one else who we have better source documents on that far back. Like, Christ like existed. Period.
Of course, you don't got to convince me. This is more
well,
for the audience.
Almost every religion agrees with this.
Yep.
Like, even Judaism agrees that Christ existed.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go very far out there to say he didn't. So the question is, how do we know that Christ came back from the dead? Well, we have hundreds of people who witnessed the resurrection of Christ and went to very painful deaths, boiled in oil, fed to lions, crucified themselves, who were willing to go to their deaths saying Christ died with no financial motive. There's no financial, like, again, it gets back to my conspiracy theory.
if there's no financial
If
motive,
there's no financial motive, if there's no other motive, right? Hey, we're going to feed you to lions if you don't like recant and say that this guy didn't raise from the dead. Not one of
Wait, so who were the people that told them to recant it?
the people who killed them, the Romans, the Jewish leaders. I mean, look at Stephen, the very first Christian martyr. He was told by the Sanhedrin, either you recant.
Sanhedrin are the higher up officials in Jewish law, right?
Yeah, and so council of 70 people, and they said, hey, Stephen, either recant and say that Christ didn't rise from the dead, or we're going to stone you right now. He's like, stone me. Christ raised from the dead. On top of that, if you look at antiquity, the Jewish leaders and Roman leaders of the time would have had every incentive, if Christ didn't raise from the dead, to track down the body, find the body and be like, hey, look, this is his body. Like, clearly him. Like, not real. We have no record of that. So that's the number one, like, defining argument for me outside of, like, theological. If you just look at this from a historical, like, standpoint, hundreds of people went to their deaths willingly, testifying that Christ died and was risen. Like, full stop.
Okay, and then you have the argument. I think I saw a clip on YouTube. It was Ben Shapiro, I believe, who said, okay, well, Christ wasn't the only one in history that was documented to have died and come back to life, right? We have the story of Lazarus. So how do you differentiate those?
Christ brought Lazarus back from the dead. Like, period.
I know.
In,
I'm
like,
trying
Was there
to
anybody
help.
else who Shapiro brought up as an example? Because I
I'd
mean,
have to go
Shapiro's a
back and
pretty
look.
sharp guy.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have just used that as the
I'd have to go back and look, but Lazarus was like the prime example of that, like
Yeah,
someone dying and then coming back from the dead.
Lazarus died later in his life. Like, Christ ascended into heaven. Like, I could be getting this wrong. I think only 3 people are documented in Scripture as being taken up into heaven: Enoch, Elijah, and then Christ.
Was Mary?
No. So like that's not an argument to me. Like,
Yeah.
hey, well, other people other people came back from the dead. Yeah, Christ brought them back from the dead.
So what's the argument against the Muslims that are like, okay, yeah, Christ was here on earth. He existed. He was a great prophet, but he's not Christ.
There's no room. So Christ is one of three things. He's either a liar, he's a lunatic, or he's Lord.
Is this from the book More Than a Carpenter?
Yeah.
No, it's from C.S. Lewis, I think, Mere Christianity.
Okay. I got that
Yeah,
from
the
the book
same.
More Than a Carpenter.
Yeah. I
Okay,
read that too.
so it's used a lot. He's either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. And what Muslims will often say is they'll be like Isa, because they call Jesus Isa. He never said he was God. Well, most Muslims don't know this, but the early Muslim scholars, because they believe that scripture was corrupted and the Bible isn't the Bible, early Muslim scholars said the uncorrupted gospel is the Gospel of John.
Okay.
The Gospel of John is where Jesus said that he was God. So
do you know the verse or in what point of reference in that gospel specifically?
I'd have to find it, but there are multiple points where he says, like, I and the Father are one.
Yeah.
That would be heretical. You know, if you get into Islam too, and their beliefs on the Quran, which the Quran is corrupted, it doesn't have a very good resource of canon. So, like, we have multiple different copies of the New Testament that are very, very close to when it was written, that are all the same.
Is that how you get the different translations or?
Well,
or
no, different
vari-
translation. So there's different points. So there's Revelation, and then which is God reveals his word to the inspired authors. The inspired authors write down what God inspired them to write, right? Like, as Protestants, we believe that every word of scripture is God breathed, which is in, my wife's going to shoot me. It's like her favorite verse. 1 Timothy 2:12. All scripture is God breathed. Then we have these original manuscripts. And then after that, there's translation. So translation is the process of getting it into, as the Westminster Confession of Faith would describe it, the many vulgar languages of the world. So everything that's not Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek. We have different translations because of that, but we still have pretty close to original source documents. And the belief is that the original source documents are God-breathed. Now, are there some wacky translations out there? Yes. There's like the Gen Z Bible, which, if like, unreadable,
The easy
terrible.
to read Bible.
No, unless you are like a 12-year-old Zoomer, you have no idea what's going on when you read that. I read it. I'm like, I don't understand these words.
Yeah, you got to go back to the King James version.
Well, so King James has some of its own issues. Personally, I like the Legacy Standard Bible. I think it's very faithful to the Hebrew, very faithful to the Greek. But again, like, we live in an era where you can go and look at the Greek, you can look at the Hebrew, you can look at the Aramaic, and you can see what it says word for word. The Logos Bible Study app is what I use for that.
So going back to the argument around Muslims not believing the fact that he's Christ, and that in the book of John there is no reference, but you're saying there is.
Yeah, there is. And he very clearly says, like, I and the Father are one. Very first verse of John. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Muslims have a really hard time, even though they accept the Gospel of John. Well, if the Word was with God and the Word eternally existed, but God's the only one who eternally existed, okay, so clearly, like, one God in three persons, like, is proof text within John. By the way, it's also proof text within the book of Genesis, which Muslims also accept, where God, while he was creating the world, you see him using the pronoun we.
We.
Yeah. Let us make man in our own image. It's in Genesis. Like, there's proof text of the Trinity there.
Love it. Yeah. Christian, what do you have as a rebuttal to that, if anything? From the perspective of, because I'm going off the perspective of, like, how
It
do you
seems
know
like there's
that?
a lot more documentation on Jesus than there is on George Washington.
That's just not true.
Fact.
No, that is true.
No, but I'm saying, like, recent firsthand evidence. Of course, there's gonna be more on George Washington.
I watched the Shane Gillis skit, and apparently George Washington was like autistic, and I've never heard that before. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of our greatest modern leaders are autistic. Elon Musk.
George Washington was a redhead. He was 6'2". I didn't know that until I watched the Shane Gillis skit. So
Wait, George Washington was a redhead?
yes,
All right, we're referencing
See, he
a
doesn't
Shane
even know
Gillis
that.
skit.
but it was accurate.
Okay. If that's accurate, this is news to me, and I have serious concern.
I hope George Washington was real because he's probably my GOAT president.
George Washington was your goat?
He fucking took down Britain and then became president. That's pretty sick.
No, it is pretty sick, actually. Like
America.
him being like, yeah, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be a
When you think
king.
of America, it's George Washington on a bald eagle, not fucking Richard Nixon. Come on.
Nobody thinks of America as Richard Nixon. Everybody thinks of a founding father. Yeah, it's usually George Washington.
I'm thinking of
That's a good
George
point.
Washington with like cut off sleeves, jacked arms, with a machine gun on his back, riding a bald eagle.
Yeah.
Machine gun.
And George Washington said no two parties, and we fucking didn't listen.
Should have definitely listened to him there.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into a whole debate on the party structure, but the way our elections are structured, it was inevitable that we would have two parties. Like
Why can't a third party seem to emerge?
a third party could emerge, and it's happened
Throughout history.
It's happened throughout history, but it always, like, you have basically one election where there's three parties, the new party emerges and takes over the old party, and then we're back to two parties.
Wasn't there a point where Republicans and Democrats, like, all
Or
the
opposites.
Republican views now were the Democrat views before?
Yeah.
No.
What?
I thought they
No?
flipped.
No, the Great Flip is a huge myth. Very few actual substantive policy changes happened between Democrats and Republicans throughout history. Like Dinesh D'Souza has a really good film on that, on how like everybody says like, oh, there was this great flip, and it's like there wasn't really a great flip in policy point. There was a flip in what sections of the country supported those policies.
Yeah. But the southern states used to be primarily Democratic.
Yeah, it used to be primarily Democrat.
I feel like it wasn't that big of a divide either. Like, back then it didn't. Compared to now, where it's like people hate each other for what they are.
People have always hated each other in politics. Like, if you read like what campaign flyers were getting sent back and forth, back
the
then.
candidates, not the people of the country. Like,
Yeah.
my dad said he registered as Democrat in 1976. He's like, I don't know, it was just
Well, I mean, he was in Binghamton, New York, and that was the popular party. With,
Scatticoke, New York.
Yeah, bro. I always reference back
We're
to
Bangington.
to watching Mad Men, and it's like, dude, remember Mad Men? Like all the politics.
Yeah.
That
Well,
trace that
I guess
show.
even
Like,
I guess even in my short lifetime, it just seems like everybody cares so much more about it than they used to.
Ever since 16, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think
I didn't give a shit about it. So I was like, Trump, oh shit.
I also think that's something with age, though.
well, it does come with age. But I do think the Mad Men point really gets back to something important, which is we lived in a very different country in the Mad Men era, right? Like the fact that I retired my wife this past year, like that used to be the standard. Like, what do you mean you retired your wife? Like, women
That's
don't
the
work
American
after they
dream.
get married.
Based.
But that's the American dream, and I think that's really what's been stolen from people, right? Like, if you want to get down to we can talk about different candidates. We can talk about different policy standpoints on niche foreign policy.
The Federal Reserve ruined your wife retiring.
The Federal Reserve ruined it, but here's my platform. I want an American man working on the median income to be able to support a comfortable middle class life with his wife at home and his kids being raised in a loving home. And that's not possible in today's economy. Like, I don't think you should have to be in the top 5% of income earners for your kids to have a stay-at-home mom. I don't think you should have to be in the top 15% of income earners to own a house. Like, it's really basic economics, and I think that's why we feel this unrest is people see housing prices compared to what their incomes are, and that's what they're mad about.
Yeah,
Like,
we're so far removed from that.
they were so far removed from an era where, so the day I graduated from college, I bought my first house, I commissioned into the Army, and I proposed to my wife. That is unheard of for
All on the
millennials.
same day?
All on the same day.
Wow, that's amazing.
So-
So movie.
Biggest day of my life. that's a fiction nowadays. I look at housing prices. Like I look at like the house I live in now. If you told me when I was growing up, imagine like I love my house, by the way. You said imagine $1 million house, it would have been way bigger than what I'm living in.
Yeah.
Like that's why I think you see this unrest and this hostility is because the American dream has been ripped out of the hands of people by high inflation, high taxes, and being raised in a world that no longer exists.
Outrageous policy.
Yeah.
Bitcoin fixes this.
I don't know that Bitcoin fixes this because I think Bitcoin was a CIA operation.
Don't do that.
Definitely was a honeypot. Yeah, for
It
sure.
was
do that,
definitely a
Jennings.
CIA
Come
operation.
on.
Dude, it had to have been.
I still think
That
there's
means
good
everything's
behind
a
it.
CIA operation.
Most
Trump's
thi-
CIA
Mo-
operation.
most things after World War II were a CIA operation.
So, anyways, I think we got to end it there.
so nothing
This was,
fucking matters.
No,
We'll continue the
everything
conversations.
matters. Like the war,
No, it's all CIA. Why does it matter?
because the people eventually rise up and eventually wake up, which is what I think is happening. Yo, what do we see on Money Twitter? Guys who want to retire their wives. People are longing for 1950s America where men can go to work, their wives can raise their children, and everyone can like live a normal, happy, peaceful life on the median income. And that's not done by going in and subsidizing the crap out of childcare, subsidizing jobs. It's done by fixing the monetary system, fixing the tax system, and fixing the business climate.
Simple.
Bitcoin fixes the monetary system.
Tax cuts fix it more.
The U.S. dollar is beyond repair.
Fact.
There's
I agree. The U.S. dollar's beyond repair, but like I would rather go to a gold standard than go to a crypto standard.
Well, how do you go back to a gold standard?
Very painfully, and no one's willing to do it.
That would remove like almost all the money supply.
So would going to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fucking economist. I just know that the U.S. dollar is perma-fucked because of the Federal Reserve.
All right. Jennings, dude, thank you for coming back.
Dude,
Hey,
that was
thanks,
great.
man.
I'm sorry
we got to break
we
this
had
up
to-
into a two-parter, maybe.
Yeah, I know. There's so
That
much
was
more we
awesome.
can talk about. I just don't want to miss dinner.
Could've saved us, man.